In this video, we're going to create the plug that would be at the end of the wire and attach it to the electrical plate on the wall. I'm going to go to my orthographic views, and I'm looking for the side view where I'm looking at the edge of that plate against the wall. So in mine, it's the side. I'll hit F on the keyboard, and I'll go to that view. I'm going to use the Revolve tool and the Surfaces menu to create the geometry I want. Holding down the space bar, I'll go to Create Curve Tool, CV Curve Tool, and I'll go to the Attributes. I want to make sure that the curve degree is set to 2. Now I'll draw the shape I generally would like to have. And if I need to, I'll drop more points than I think I might use because it's easier to delete than to go back and add in. So I'm putting together a general shape of a plug. I'll hit Return to go to the object mode for the path, and I'll hit W and I'll center the pivot. I'm going to move the pivot by holding down D. And I'm going to put my Z-axis where I would like this to revolve. Now I'm going to revolve it on the Z-axis. Holding down the space bar, I'll go to Surfaces, Revolve, and Attributes. And I'll choose Z, and I'll hit Apply. I'll hit W and center the pivot. Now I can see where my pivot is, and I can move my geometry. While I'm in this view, I'll move it down to the general area that I would like it to be. And at this point, maybe I'll start to edit the wire as well. So now I'll click and drag and move the wire out so it makes more sense in the context of the plug I just made. Alright, so that'll do for now. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to my top view and I'll hit A, and I'm going to select my plug geometry and I'll move it over to the wire. I'll hit F on the keyboard and I'll try and line it up the best I can there. Now I'll go to my perspective view and see what else I have to do with this. Alright, so the wire's a little bit low. So I'll position the plug first, hit 4 on the keyboard, and now I'll right click and choose Control Vertexes for the wire, and I'll edit it a little bit further. And I'm going to make the plug a little thicker because the wire is thicker. I'll select the plug, and I'm going to go to the CV path to edit this. And I'll go back into my side view to do so. So if I hit F on the keyboard, now I can right click, choose Control Vertex, and I just have to move a few of these vertices in the center here just to accommodate the thickness of the wire. Now that I have what I want with the plug, I'm going to use the plate against the wall as a plate that I can use for my doorway as well. So I'll select the plate, I'll hit Command D, and I'll go to the top view and I'll hit A on the keyboard. I'm going to drag the duplicate over to where my door is, and I'll hit F on the keyboard. Now I want to rotate this so the bevel points out. Hitting E on the keyboard, I can see that I'm going to have to rotate it on my Y-axis. To do this precisely, I'm going to go to the channel box, and I'm going to rotate -90. And I'll hit W, and now I'll put it against the door. I'll go to my orthographic views, and in my side view, I'll put this where I'd like it to be on the surface of the door, and I'll scale it, make it a little taller, a little narrower. If I go to my perspective view now, I'll hit F on the keyboard, and there's my plate for the door. Now, just the way we created the plug, we're going to create a doorknob. So I'll go to my orthographic views again, and I'm looking for my front view so that when I hit F with the plate selected, I'm going to create my doorknob in this space. Holding down the space bar, I'll go to Create, Curve Tools, CV Curve Tool, and I'll just plot the points I need That'll give me a shape of a doorknob when I revolve it with the surface menu. And I'll hit return. I'll hit W and I'll center the pivot. Now I need to move the pivot. So I'll hold down D on the keyboard and I'll move it into the position I'd like it to be so that when I revolve it, I'll get the shape I want. I'm going to use revolve, and I'm going to revolve it on the x-axis. Holding down the space bar, surfaces, revolve, attributes, and I'll change my axes to X, and I'll hit apply. Now, just like the plug, I'll have to center the pivot. And I'm going to move the pivot against the back so that once I get it against the plate, if I were to scale it, it will stay against the plate. I'm going to go to my top view, and I'll hit F on the keyboard, and I'll zoom back, and I'll hit W, and I'll move it to where the plate is. Once again, I'll hit F on the keyboard so we can see where we are. So there's my plate geometry right there, and there's my doorknob. Going to my orthographic views one more time, and I'm going to check the height of it against the plate. So I'll put it a little bit higher, and I think I'm going to make the plate a little bit smaller. So I'll do so with just the Y and the Z axes. And going to my perspective view, I'll hit F on the keyboard, and now I've got the plate and the doorknob. All I need to do now is use my hypershade to add color to it. So I'll shift select these two, hit Command G, I'll center the pivot. I'm going to delete by type history because I haven't done that since I created the doorknob. And now I'll right click anywhere in my viewport and I'll choose Assign New Material. Arnold, AI Standard, and very often when you go to your attributes, you may not see the color node there right away. You'll have to click on the hypershade, and then the hypershade, I'll name it. And I'll give it the color I want. And now when I go to my material attributes, when I right click, it will appear here.